I suppose drawing is really the essence of what we do. It translates our thoughts. It's also the vehicle for communicating our ideas with the world. Drawings really have gone back to the start of time, I suppose, as a fundamental way of communicating. I like the use of the yellow tracing paper roll. It's got a freedom to it, and the blank page that allows you to really just Imagineer with no constraints, frankly, and it allows you to explore options ad infinitum. The use of the pen and coloured pencils and felt pens is really a freedom, I think, that's unique to the architectural profession. And gradually the drawings become reality. You leave the realm of optioneering and get into more specific tactical thinking about the issues of how you plan a building, how you lay out a building, how you relate a building to other buildings. So drawing is really the vehicle for that. You can start to imagine the textures of the building by really colour craning in. It's as simple as that. The shadowed diagrams and the skyography all add to the depth and the three-dimensionality of the piece. And gradually you become more convinced or otherwise by the options. The yellow paper roll's expendable, so until you find something that you're comfortable with as a solution to the various constraints, the pen and pencil just needs to keep flowing.
I think we're coming out of the recession now, and practices are beginning to grow again. The market is recovering and practices are willing to experiment, they're willing to change, they're starting to expand, and they're looking at where they're going to go next.
One of the biggest challenges has been to stop the majority of architects overdoing things and showing off. Architects will think that their buildings are important. They will think that they're visually important, and some are, but the majority of buildings are there to contain functions and to sit within a setting.
The JRA concept of contextual modernism is, I think, quite a useful one, because on the one hand it says the architecture we do is what one would describe as contemporary as opposed to classical or some other historic style. But on the other hand, it's not saying our building will have primacy over anything that surrounds it.
Contextual modernism is the ethos of John Robertson Architects. It's a philosophy that I think we've really gradually developed over our 20-year period. I've always been very interested in how buildings work within the city and how buildings work within cities, and I think there's a great opportunity for buildings to work in harmony with one another, but I also think there's a great opportunity for individual buildings to stand out from the crowd. John Robertson Architects completed One Great St Helens for Greycoat in 1997, and this was one of the most important pieces of work we did in the origins of the practice, which explored our ethos and idea of contextual civic modernism. And our architecture had to respond to many different contextual positions. On the north side of the building you have the Great St Helens Church. On the south side of the building you have huge 43-storey towers. The city is an area of London that is really full of these diametrically opposed references. You've got very historic buildings, you've got very modern buildings, and we wanted to design a building that really was a medium between the historic enclave of St Helens and very modern buildings.
The question of how you deal with new and old in a way which is neither offensive on the one hand nor boring on the other, is well illustrated by the work the JRA did on the Daily Express building. Now here they were faced with a historic context because the Daily Express building, a listed and fine example of the heyday of newspapers from the 1930s. But on the other hand, there was the potential for a huge amount of additional commercial space once the newspaper had moved out.
Our solution was really to understand and look at the very different townscape of each of the streets and to model the building to sit within that variegated townscape. And we used stone on the Fleet Street frontage, whereas we used metal and glass on Shoe Lane and on St Bride Street.
JRA's work is a good example of a number of recent trends that have led to a changing face of what we think of as commercial architecture and office architecture in particular.
We're sitting in the atrium of Park House in Finsbury Circus, which is a very large project that we completed for Prudential Assurance about 5 years ago. Very interesting project comprising 2 listed buildings which overlook Finsbury Circus. These 2 buildings, 16 and 18 Finsbury Circus, were designed between 1916 and 1923. The opportunity presented itself to merge the 2 buildings, and the way we did this was that we combined the 2 buildings together. We extended the building onto Eldon Street. We got permission from the City of London and English Heritage to build about another 60,000 square feet to complete the triangular master plan, and we kept the best parts of the interior, which comprised the historic entrance hall, parts of the staircase within that entrance hall, and of course all of the structure within the Grade 2 buildings. We've been able to create 20,000 square foot office floor plates, which again by city standards have tremendous natural light from Finsbury Circus. You've got the beautiful aspect of Finsbury Circus. You've got the rear view which overlooks Broadgate, and the central atrium actually of course brings light right down into level 1 of the building. I was very keen to contrast the modern additions with the historic fabric. So we're sitting in what I feel is an uncompromisingly modern atrium, but it does actually really reposition and rebrand the building. To design a new building in the City of London, we're looking at spending about £200 to £215 a foot. Taking an existing building, keeping the structure, the frame, probably much of the cladding as well, we can deliver the building for about £120 to £130 a foot. 10 Queen Street Place was designed as almost a ground scraper building which fits within the St Paul's grid heights, which is a grid of squares that protect the views of St Paul's Cathedral. And this building was originally built as a big bang dealing floor building. It had 50,000 square foot floor plates. Our work was really to rethink the building, to rethink the concept of the building, and to pick up on many of the fundamental good points of the building, like the regular grid, like the strong concrete frame, the quite reasonable floor-to-floor height. The building was then pre-let to law firm S.J. Berwin. Our concept was to drive 3 very regular atria spaces into the centre of the building. There was a huge structural intervention. It involved what I call open heart surgery. We really worked very hard to make this one of the first generations of green retrofit buildings. We've got very good perimeter light around the outside of the building, and excellent light within the middle of the building. The atriums are used to exhaust the hot air out of the offices. We've created a whole new entrance facade, which is double height, draws people into the building. One of the greatest strengths of the work that our firm does is that we add significant value to the assets that our clients ask us to work on. 10 Queen Street Place is a prime example of that. The client's been able to sell the investment for quite a significant improvement in the capital value. There was the real opportunity to make use of the roof as an amenity for the office occupiers. And we did this really in two ways. First of all, we were able to persuade the city that we could slightly encroach through the grid on the north part of the site and build about another 25,000 square feet of office space. And the south side of the roof provides about another 25,000 feet of roof garden. We've really maximised the tremendous views that you have onto the south side of the river, where you've now got the Shard, you've got Tate Modern, and as you look west you look up to the Savoy, the Adelphi, and even the Houses of Parliament.
We've developed, you could almost say, a parallel economy across the tops of the buildings of the city, with the roof terraces and restaurants of new change next to St Paul's Cathedral, public parks on the roofs of some buildings. All of this has been, if you like, a parallel public city in the sky to help to compensate for our lack of space around the base of the building and at street level. We've been able to achieve this on the back of a powerful development boom coupled with a huge application of architectural ingenuity.
In their proposals for London 2050, JRA looked at 3 different areas, and one of them spoke about the Thames and the re-inhabitation of the river. I thought it was a really interesting idea, this idea that we do have this large body of water, now mostly redundant in terms of shipping or any other usage other than pleasure. It all seems very plausible for a future for the city.
The idea of what the vision would be like in a further 50 years, areas like Aldgate, where we felt there's the opportunity to build a new financial centre that could link the south bank of the river with the Shard and More London with Broadgate in the north. Smithfield, where we felt there could be a new cultural quarter linking St Bartholomew's Hospital with Farringdon, with the new Crossrail station, and indeed with Smithfield Market. And we also took a really close look at what the city core might be like in 2050, and I think we felt that above all the city would become an even greener place to live and work.
You cannot predict what sort of architect will be doing what sort of building, and you cannot predict 100% what the outcome will be. In other words, it's become more about design and less about formulaic concepts. So the new world of commercial architecture is actually the world of architecture.